All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the very next session. And for this particular session, we'll be looking at sustainable rural electrification financing. Very important topic as well. And this session will go on for an hour. To help us with this, the moderator, the able moderator for this session is no other person than the President, Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, in the person of Mr. Ademilua. Please put your hands together for Mr. Ayo as he takes on the podium. You're welcome, sir. Please put your hands together for him. The President, Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd always thought that my name is one of the easiest to pronounce until the presenter was struggling with it. My name is Ademilua. It's quite easy in my own parlance. I want to welcome everybody again to this session. It promises to be a great session. I believe this session is the main session because this is where the finance will be discussed. And we're going to have it in a form of two-way. I'll be inviting to the stage the MD of REA, Mr. Abba Aliyu, to make a presentation first. Then when it's true, I will ask the rest of the panelists to join him on the stage. So with a round of applause, I want you to join me as I welcome my brother, my friend, Mr. Abba Aliyu, to the stage to give us a presentation. And when he's done, we'll call everybody to stage for the panel of discussion. A round of applause again, please. Yeah, I know we're hungry. We'll soon be out for lunch.
Thanks, bro. They're going to put the... good afternoon once again. Thank you, Ayo, for the introduction. My name is Abba Aliyu. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Rural Electrification Agency. My presentation is going to highlight the various financing opportunities that are currently available for both the private sector, the financiers, the renewable energy service companies, and even other stakeholders operating within the ecosystem as opportunities for them to harness and take advantage of. So the first slide, next slide. Okay. Next. This is just to give a general overview of where we are in terms of electricity access change globally. One of the first things that needs to be done is that the issue of electricity access is not only in Nigeria, it's a global issue. There are over 600 million people that are without electricity globally. In fact, for the first time in 5 years, the number of people without access increased. For the first 10 years, that number tends to reduce based on the various interventions that have taken place. But recently, just last year, that number increased despite increase in funding and increase in different interventions to address the access challenge. And one key important point that I would like to stress is that distributed renewable energy, it's being seen as the most viable alternative way to address the electricity access challenge. And that is why you will see that this number has increased. The share of renewable energy increased from 16.7% to 18.7% last year. But within Nigeria, what we are looking at is a country with about 226 million people trying to achieve total electricity access, universal energy access by 2060. And out of the 45% electricity deficit in the country, we have found out that 31% of the population are best to be provided with electricity using the renewable energy, that is the distributed renewable energy access. And one very important thing that was said in the last panel by the only female that was at the last panel, she mentioned that despite the fact that even areas where there are already access to electricity, that they still need to have a renewable energy as an alternative source. And that struck a key idea to us, so that the renewable energy can now serve like a backbone or a backstop to provide, to ensure that continuously there is access. And I think this is an idea that we need to look at carefully and explore. Now, so beyond the fact that the country has electricity access challenge, we picked 3 critical sectors of the Nigerian economy to look at how are we doing as regards to electricity. We looked at the health, education, and agriculture. These are critical sectors of the Nigerian economy that desperately require sustainable electricity to help to make sure that we deliver on the key objectives of these sectors. And if you look at how we are doing in these sectors, you will realize that there is still a lot that needs to be done in the sectors. So what are we doing? For us to now deliver to address this challenge, there are key aspects that we need to look at it: financing, the operational framework, the sustainability, implementation vehicle, operational framework, data and planning, and talent pipeline. These are key things that needs to be done in a coordinated manner to help the country address the electricity access challenge. Now, what are we doing in this area? The first, in terms of financing, Nigeria has never gotten it this right in terms of catalyzing catalytic financing for the private sector to intervene and address this electricity access challenge. It is no more a news that we know that the country, under the present leadership of Mr. President, has signed the biggest public sector financing, renewable energy financing in the entire world, the $750 million DES financing. But that's not the only one. We also have started the National Public Sector Solarization Initiative, which is going to be a 500 billion naira financing, of which 100 billion had already been provided to Rural Electrification Agency to start intervention. In fact, just on Monday, we sent out the first tender of the different interventions that we intend to do across the country in health, education, and rural communities. This is not just a rhetoric. This is reality. This is actual thing that we are doing to address the access challenge. So a total, based on our estimate in terms of our financing deal pipeline, we are looking at having a moving close to $3 billion that can be utilized to catalyzing the private sector funding, and some of them direct intervention in the form of EPC to address the access challenge, electricity access challenge in the country. These are the various funding streams that we are currently exploring, most of which we already have the funding with us. So after getting the financing, the next thing is, how do you utilize the financing? And that is why the Rural Electrification Agency will now design these 12 different programs, each with a specific objective, with a specific target to help address the electricity access challenge. The biggest of which we spoke about is the DES project, that we intend to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians and to deploy 1,350 mini grids across the country, of which we had already started. We started with the 42 interconnected mini grids, 2 of which are going to be here in Lagos in connection with Ikeja Disco. So that has started. Then we started also the National Public Sector Solarization Initiative, utilizing the 100 billion naira that was given to us to intervene in some of the federal institutions and health institutions. We also are aware of the eHeart, which is going to be a very ambitious project targeting to electrify 7.5 million Nigerians, with a plan to provide 25 mini grids in each state across the country. And each mini grid is going to be an integrated mini grid that will address the community's health, education, transportation, agriculture, and electricity need of those communities. Those projects have already started. We also have the African mini grid. The Commissioner of Energy in Plateau State would bear a testament that just last 3 weeks, we broke the ground in a Kwapam local government and agricultural clusters where they do a lot of rice farming. We intend to now deploy a mini grid to help reduce the cost of their rice processing. That single mini grid in that Alheri farm in Kwampam community in Plateau State will reduce the cost of processing rice by 51%. Most of the farmers have gone out of business due to the fact that the margin they are getting in processing the rice vis-a-vis the cost of processing, it's not viable for them to continue the business. And the single costs of that increase their cost of processing is the cost of diesel. So they are, most of them, out of business. But we intervene. They are now going to provide them with this mini grid, which will reduce the cost of their processing and will give an automatic increase of 51% margin to the farmers. This is just a bit of the impact of the intervention that we are doing across the country. Now, as we are deploying or planning to deploy more and more mini grids out of the country, one of the main things that is very conscious in our mind is the sustainability of our intervention. And because we have 2 different approaches of intervention, one the private sector driven and the second the public sector driven intervention, we designed 2 different programs for sustainability. For the private sector intervention, we developed the concept of the RESCO, Renewable Energy Service Companies, of which the chairman of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria and the CEO and president of A4&T is here. The cloud are there. We are working with them to move them from being developers to a sustainable companies that can stand on their own, be a utility scale companies that are managing portfolio of mini grids over time. That process is ongoing, and we provided funding under a World Bank program that we call DRIFT, Distributed Renewable Energy Enhancement Fund, where we provide funding to enhance their internal structure, their strategies, their system, their skills, their staffing, of which at times we will even provide them with staff to help strengthen the system of the RESCOs. So that is what we are doing in that regard, to make sure that the private sector companies that are intervening in this area have developed to be sustainable companies for a very long period of time and be able to catalyze financing on their own so that the infrastructure they deploy can continue to operate over a very long period of time. For the public sector intervention that we are doing, we just secured the approval of federal government to create a renewable asset management company. The company that we're hoping to be a 1 trillion naira company that will house all these infrastructures that we are deploying in the university, in the health institution, and public institution. So this company would have in its balance sheet this asset, and we use that balance sheet to raise more capital so that we continue to catalyze more intervention across the country. In fact, the future of renewable energy in Nigeria has never been this good in the entire life history of the country. I think I deserve a round of applause. Then there is also need for another critical component that is required for us to continue to do this intervention, and this is data. We need to know where are these areas, what are the economic, social parameters of these communities that we need to intervene. The financiers, the like of FCMB are here, the like the Sterling Bank are here. They need to know that is there a funding pipeline that they can commit funding for them to earmark funding for the private sector to continue to do that. And for us to give them that assurance, we need data. And that is why we started working on the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, where we map the entire country. We identify where are these so-called unelectrified communities, not only identifying them, but what are the socio-economic variables of these communities. How many households are in these communities? How many people are there? What is the nature of what is their capacity to pay for the electricity? We have now completed this work working with McKinsey, and we are going to present the outcome of the work to the National Economic Council next month. We have identified the entire areas that need this intervention, the economic variables of these areas, number of households, number of people, their load demand, their even expected load demand in the next 5 years, their nature of occupation, their ability to pay, and other things. So this data is available, and we will democratize this data. We'll make it an app that is viable, available to all Android and iPhone users, so that you can access it at any time and be able to use that data and app to make your own decision. Financiers can do the decision, government can do the decision, whoever wants to also intervene, the RESCOs can use that data to make their own decision. Seems like you want your lunch. Then for the talent pipeline, as we have the financing and we have the RESCOs and we have the sustainability plan, one missing link is that we need to be conscious to say that we have the talent pipeline available, that this private sector can leverage on to do all this intervention. If you have $3 billion to intervene and there are no technical skill and competencies required to implement that funding, then you are wasting your time. So we are also conscious of that. We have started, in fact, just last week, one of the RESCOs complained to me that he recruited about 20 staff, spent over 50 million naira to train them, and now out of the 20 staff, he only has 7 of them. 13 have been poached by other RESCOs. Maybe it's the A4 and T that poached the staff. So they poached them now, and they have taken them to other institutions. So now they are scared of, the RESCO are scared of, how do we get the talent? If we get the talent and train them and somebody comes and poach them, what happens in the bank now is taking place in the renewable space. So what we are doing is to make sure that there is so much available skill and competencies that the RESCOs, private sector, even the financiers can utilize, even the government agencies. One of the things that we are doing is under the Energizing Education Program, we have trained currently 150 STEM female students that have been exposed from soil testing to the commissioning of a big mega hybrid power plant. We are also in the process of training additional 1,500 from 15 universities. That is in the process. And we designed a project that is called RESCO Next, which we publish, where over 10,000 candidates applied, and we intend to pick 100 of them and start training, a 1-year training. This is not just a classroom training, but a 3-month classroom training and a 7-month internship with the rest course. So we will bring out 100 ready-made talent into the sector, and this will continue to work. And for long-term sustainability, we have now started the process of creating the first renewable university in Africa. The feasibility study has already been done for the viability of that project. It's going to be an or a green university. All the courses are green financing for the financiers, renewable energy, renewable engineering, recycling, environment, everything green. That is the courses that this university will do. And that feasibility has been done. We are working to get the financiers and funders and start this university. So we are working for a long term to make sure that we did not provide talent pipeline for Nigeria, but for the entire Africa. And this is something doable that will take place. In terms of impact, this is just one of our projects, in fact, that there's 17.5 million and 3.7 million households. This is just theirs. We have the e-heart that we are looking at 7.9 million and about 1.2 million households. We have Desert to Power that we are now in the process of crystallizing the funding. We have the NPSSI that we have started and we're intervening in different government agencies, health education and government parastatals, and many more programs that we have started. The Africa Mini Grid project also that I mentioned that we have started in Plateau State. So what's the different financing instrument that we are looking at, which will be the crux of the next panel, is a different financing instrument. So apart from the catalytic funding that we are providing to the private sector, we are looking at long-term patient capital. We are looking at financiers that can provide equity funding to the rest course so that they would not continuously be on debt, looking for debt, but they will have a patient capital that will give them the opportunity to plan for long term. We're looking at green guarantees, climate financing, capital market, which the Renewable Asset Management Company is going to utilize to raise the 1 trillion naira innovative financing mechanism. All these are instruments that we have designed and implemented currently for implementation. In conclusion, what are we looking at for the future? One, we are looking at value chain development. I was misquoted to say that, the federal government is looking at banning importation of panels. That's never the case. What we are looking at is making sure that we domesticate the production and manufacturing of panels in Nigeria. We want to make Nigeria to be the renewable hub of Africa, and that has started, and that is something that we'll continue to push. Already, we mentioned that we crystallized the emergence of the Levin, the MD of Levin said, get up, let them see you so that they can engage you. Levin, they have started production of PV panels since February here in Ikotun in Lagos, 100 megawatt capacity. There's a JRV 250 megawatt capacity that has completed also in Abuja. We're looking at also, we have signed an MOU with Owando for 1.2 gigawatt PV panels manufacturing plant, and we also have signed with InfraCorp for 1 gigawatt manufacturing, all in collaboration with the Renewable Asset Management Company. We will make it happen. We will make Nigeria to be a renewable hub in Nigeria. Not only the panels, there's also an investment of $150 million for lithium battery assembly plant here in Lagos at Lekki Trade Free Zone. This is all things that we are looking at. We're looking at also changing some regulation to help make the private sector incentivized to do more investment into the sector. Already we engage the regulator to increase the cap of mini grid regulation from 1 megawatt to 10 or 20 or 50. And I'm happy to say that already the regulator have given us a derogation approval for our interconnected mini grid that we're going to do, 42 of them, all of them above 1 megawatt, some of them up to 10 megawatts. And they have also started the process of developing a regulation, interconnected mini grid regulation that will increase the cap from 1 megawatt maybe to 10 or 20 megawatts. We're looking at different funding windows. The desert to power, it's a potential area. The Indian Exim Bank is a potential area. The JICA, 200 million also additional financing for the DES. All approvals have been gotten from the Japanese government. We are now going to processing the internal government, Nigerian government approval for us to have additional 200 million to be added to the $750 million funding capacity. For alternative renewable energy sources, we are not looking at just solar. A question has been asked at this event. We're looking at other sources. The commissioner from Gombe is here. He would tell you that we are looking at the first hybrid micro hydro and solar power plant is being conceived, designed, and will start implementation this year in a community called Balanga in Gombe State. That once we succeed in that, we would continue to explore all the micro, small, medium, and micro hybrid mini hydro dams that will continue to intervene in that area. So we're looking at it. We are also looking at small wind for the coastal states across the country. So this is what we are looking at, and this is the future of renewable energy in the country. Thank you very much.
I think he deserves a very big round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Abba Aliyu, for telling us all that REA has been doing. Of course, as the president of Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, and also the CEO of H4T, one of the RESCOs, I can testify to it that indeed the Rural Electrification Agency has been living up to its word. So we're going to dive straight into our panel session right now. I'll call the panelists back on stage, and we're going to make it very interactive. Like I said, this session is a very important session. It's sustainable rural electrification financing. So if you've been thinking about how you're going to make the project get financed, this is the session you need to listen. The first person I'll be calling back will be the MD of REA, Mr. Abba Aliyu. A round of applause for him as he comes up stage. Please keep it coming. A round of applause. Then to follow will be Mr. George Ogbonnaya. That's the VP Group Head for Business Development, Head of Business Development at FCMB Energy Group. Please, a round of applause for him. We're going to call on Barrister Kofo Olokun as Executive Commissioner for Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission. A round of applause for her as she comes up stage. I'll be calling Mr. Oluwaseyi Okunuga as the Group Head Renewable Energy Group, Sterling Bank. A round of applause for Mr. Oluwaseyi. So we're going to be looking at sustainable rural electrification financing together. There's a session that will go on for just about like 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. It will be brief, it will be direct, and after going around the panelists, we will open the floor for questioning. I know that we will be having some form of questioning, maybe more questions in this session, so I will be giving more time for questions. A round of applause for all my panelists once again. So I will be starting with the MD of REA again. Of course, he just finished his wonderful presentation, and I want him to tell us, from being in Lagos in the last 48 hours, we want to thank the Honorable Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources, Lagos State. A round of applause for him for coming up with this wonderful program. I mean, it's nice to see friends from across everywhere. What do you think is a major problem that Lagos may have with rural electrification?
Thank you very much. I wouldn't say problem, I would say the challenges being faced. And these challenges is not peculiar to Lagos State, maybe to all other states in the country. One definitely is the lack of data. Before any intervention can take place, before any financier would feel comfortable to intervene or to put in financing, they would like a data. They would like to know whether there's an area of intervention and the viability of that area. So that lack of data is one of the main challenges affecting this financing in the sector, and that is why Rural Electrification Agency now prioritize providing a unified, harmonized data and democratize it to each and every person for accessibility. The second challenge is the financing. So most of the financing that we require are debt financing. If we go back to look at the energy transition plan of that the country, Nigeria, produced in COP26, a whopping total of $410 billion is required to achieve the transition. This $410 billion required, where would it come from? So definitely the availability of the financing is one of the greatest challenge affecting the sector. Then lastly, just to be brief, is ensuring the sustainability. One of the challenge of renewable energy project is the fact that it has a lifespan, and which means that it's a risky business. The financiers here will say it. If there's a lifespan and I want to do a project financing, I need to be sure that I have the visibility of my revenue to the time period of the end of the lifespan of that infrastructure, to make sure that I recoup my financing before I can fund that kind of a project. So that sustainability of the project is another challenge affecting this financing and investment within the sector.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for him. I want to move to Barrister Kofo Oluwaseyi, the Executive Commissioner for Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission. I'm sure people want to hear from you what the new agency has in plan. I mean, how easy will the project developers, the RESCOs, how will they be able to function to develop projects? And what are the things you have in place that will gladden the mind of the financiers to be sure that their investments will be protected? You have the floor, madam.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Okay, sorry, good afternoon. Actually, I would say that I think everybody has actually echoed it quite a number of times, which is that Lagos has actually gone really steps ahead. And I would say that the establishment of the law was actually the major foundation for that. And I would like to start from where the MD actually started when he mentioned some of the challenges. The major one is data, and I have always said this over and over again, because any sector, anywhere you want to go, data is actually very important, because data actually drives quite a number of things. It drives major decisions, it drives business decisions, like I said, profitability, investments, and all of those things. And all of these actually then end up, impacting the economy. But if you look at the law, it is very, very clear that data management is actually catered to. And how do I mean? The law actually makes provision for the collation of data. A proper data needs to be done in identifying unserved and underserved areas. And that, you would agree with me, is like the foundation, is after you have identified these areas. Because if you look on the internet, you have different data flying around about where are the rural areas, what do we mean by rural areas, what is the extent of service that they have. And you're looking at reports that are maybe 2023, 2022. You don't really have anyone right now, if I may say. So the law actually makes provision and encourages that particular data collation needs to be done. There has to be an off-grid implementation plan that needs to be put in place. So after that data collation, you then look at each area
and then be strategic about which of the solutions need to be made to suit each of these areas, because you have different environments, different terrain, different requirements, resources, and all of those things. So that already is like a start point, and it's like comfort to whoever is coming in to say, I want to invest in this. And then you have also the Rural Electrification Agency that was also recently established. Not really totally new, because they used to be the Electricity Board, but now actually empowered more structured and all of that. And then you have a fund that has been created. So you have a rural electrification fund now created by the law that actually is supposed to be for electrifying all these rural areas. And then you have different funds that need to go into these places. It's going to be well catered to. There's going to be allocation of the budget. It's going to also come from the LASEC, the Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission, in terms of whatever penalties and sanctions that come in, grants, donations, and all of those need to come in. And there are different securities that have been put in place to make sure that the fund is not affected in any way or there's no disruption. So these are the kind of things that I would like to hear if I were to be a financier or if I were to be an investor who want to come in to actually put those things in place. Now, those are the kind of things that you see in the law. And that the recent consultation that was actually organized by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in terms of the 3 different plans that have been put in place. The strategic implementation plan, the strategy and implementation plan, you have the Lagos implementation integrated resources plan. All of these policies and this plan already also gives comfort, because you have things like there's going to be tax incentives, they're going to be working with the REA, with all other agencies to see how they're going to partner. There's going to be improved public-private partnerships and all of those things. There are things that the financiers will want to see, the investors and all of that. So the commission now coming to that, obviously it's whatever it is we do is going to be dependent on what the law has established, the policies that have been established. Our own goal is to make sure we create an enabling environment that would actually make all of these things thrive, all of these things come to reality, the goals, the achievements. Let financiers come in, let all these areas be, let them have access to power, let there be improved economy and all of those. So we're going to be creating an enabling environment by, first of all, ensuring that we have a sustainable regulatory framework. You cannot underestimate what that actually does. If there's anything that any financier or any investor will tell you is, I want to be sure of what your framework is going to be. I want to understand what the regulatory climate is about, because I don't want to come in and then you change the policies. One thing we have actually made up our mind to do is ensure that there's a sustainable, transparent regulatory framework that you can actually run with. And in terms of return on investment, the tariff design is going to be very well done. It's going to be well thought through. Because for things like this, whether you're talking about rural electrification or you're also talking about urban electrification, the usual grid expansion and all of this, no investor wants to invest in any sector, in any business, without ensuring that he recoups his investment and then gets some form of returns on it. Everything is going to be embedded in the methodology. The design is going to be well thought through, and it's going to ensure that we have that comfort for these financiers that will come in. There are also other methods that we've seen adopted in different areas that we can also bring in terms of ensuring that we create that enabling environment to be able to ring fence whatever revenues or revenues that will come in from that particular area or those areas that you have actually gotten the financing and all of those things. Then we also have different things like transparency in terms of licensing. We're going to be streamlining the whole process and all of that. Somebody mentioned at, I think, the first panel said something about, there are so many licenses that you have to obtain, so many authorizations and all of that. If there's anything we're going to be guaranteeing as LASEC is we're going to be thinking through how the licensing process that relates to the electricity that you're going to be getting from us is going to be straightforward, transparent, very clear, and you're going to be getting it in real time in terms of short periods so that we are able to get this project churned out. Thank you.
A round of applause for Barrister Kofo. She took time to really, I was almost thinking you were working for maybe the discos before, or you're a developer or ESCO yourself. Thank you so much for doing that. I'll be moving to my friend, Mr. George Ogbonnaya. And my question is, from your experience, what are the key risks the bank perceive when evaluating rural electrification?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I move to the bank, let me share my experience. I think I got into this business like 6-7 years ago, and the first attraction was the difference between the cheap electricity and affordable electricity. And I'm happy to say we made progress, and as a bank, we probably have funded most of the, gave them the first loan. But one of the things I want to point out to the regulators is we can take a leaf from what you're doing. Government often have fun, but what I've seen we already use as a catalyst. In other words, use it to unlock money capital. And it's particularly important in this sector because of one major reason. I've been in different energy sessions outside this country. You find out that in the EU and America, the model for renewable energy is very simple. It is high CapEx and low OpEx. So there's an attraction that if you make enough investment today, you have a sustained, low operations. So it becomes easier. You can throw in a lot of money. And that's why you see, even in places like Germany, they have now more green energy than normal electricity. But when you come to Africa, because the cost of capital is relatively higher, it is no longer a high CapEx and low OpEx. You now have a high CapEx and high OpEx. So your strategy needs to change. You can't just adopt exactly what has been done in the UK, in the US. So the way you now use your fund has to be a bit different. When you subsidize, what are you subsidizing? Very, very important. So from a banking point of view, credit debt is the same for everyone, particularly for an emerging sector. So most banks are regulated. We have the credit policy, which is basically the same across the world. So one, this is an emerging sector, which is new. Most banks don't understand. And the basic principle in banking, you don't fund what you don't understand. Number two is most of the players are relatively younger and new. So we call them startup. Normally, most credit policy described against startup. The third one is that most of them are green field projects. So they are pretty much, projects with no balance sheet. So if something goes wrong, there's no fallback. So from a natural funding perspective, it's a tough meat. But we have cracked it, so there's no need to be afraid. We have cracked it. And what we did in the early stage was to use what we call a scheme-based approach. When we then bring them into different buckets and then reference them as a bucket. I'm happy to announce that all the first set of funds we've done in the last 4 or 5 years, we have no bad loan.
A round of applause for the rescues.
So we have no bad loan, from the ones who funded, which has given us the motivation to do more. So right now, we have more support, both from the board, the management, and we have actually raised even a lot more fund from the DFIs. But the need for now is now bigger. You can see the numbers my CEO was sharing. So we have moved from $50 million to $3 billion.
Yeah.
So I remember the first set of people who gave money, the first set of cash we gave them was about like 150, 250 million. Now they are coming back to me with $10 million. And I'm looking at this man. 4 years ago, I couldn't give you 20 million. Now you ask me for $50 million. But that's the scale that we are seeing. And it also means that the structure we have to change slightly different. So as a bank, we find a way to mitigate some of those risks. They are real risks, but at the heart of those risks is actual lack of understanding. If you have a banker that understands the industry, then you're safer. You can get the funding that you need. But generally, it's still a big issue because a lot of people don't really understand it because it's perceived as risky business because one is a new area, the players are relatively young and new, and it's a greenfield project. These are usually high-risk kind of projects. But the only mitigation is experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Round of applause for Mr. George. And you might not really understand the meaning of what he said when he was saying that the first set of, the developers that they funded has a zero non-performing loan, which means all the rescues paid back. And I mean, they're talking about almost like £1 billion to make sure that this industry is going up. So a round of applause for our members at REA and the RESCOs, who ensure that they preserve the reputation. Thank you to you all. I'll be moving to Mr. Seyi Okunuga of Sterling Bank. They've also been, one of the strong supporters in our sector. And my question to you, Seyi, is what kind of protection would you want to ask from the MD of REA, the rest of the players, the government, the commissioners that are here, that will give you more comfort to be able to give more money to RESCOs and other project developers and every other person in the value chain of these projects that we're talking about, so that we can scale at the level we want to scale?
Thank you, and good afternoon. So first, I must commend Dr. Abba Aliyu. He's doing a lot. I mean, under your watch, we've seen a whole lot of transformation that has happened. And as a matter of fact, you are now encroaching our space as bankers. You understand? I don't know whether we should build a fence for you. You are now even encroaching the educational space by building Renewable Energy University. You now want to become an asset management company. So you are doing a lot. And I think the time demand for what you are doing. The first proposal I will be making, not on behalf of my management, but I'll be speaking personally right now, is that it will be nice where you also involve the banks as investor within the Renewable Energy Asset Management Company, because the banks also hold a substantial amount of assets, as probably as collateral as security for some of these transactions. So you might all want to incorporate us in the structure. I'm just putting that there. Maybe something for you to consider. Talking about what makes us comfortable as banks, I'm not speaking for Sterling Bank here. I guess right from the very beginning, right from the evolution of the renewable energy, there was a time that when you approach banks, you would ask for landed property, shares, and other things as collateral for to secure transaction, to secure a project. But I think banks have gotten to a point where they now realize that renewable energy assets can serve as comfort for that. But as a bank, we are not stopping at that. We look at blended structures to reduce risk associated with transaction. And that includes seeking for credit enhancement guarantees. Not too long, we secured some form of funding or guarantee from a well-known foundation in Nigeria to enhance the extension of funding to renewable energy companies and vendors. That will essentially reduce the risk associated with a transaction. And when the risk associated with a transaction comes down, what it will also do is to affect the interest rate. Unfortunately, what MPR is doing right now is kind of crazy. And that's part of the challenges REA will be having with some of the developers. I know so many developers, just like they are approaching you, they are also approaching the bank. Just yesterday, I spoke to like 3 developers who said, oh, I'm speaking with this state government. REA has said I should go and bring a firm commitment from the bank and the rest. Because of the cost of fund in the country right now, most banks are turning to intervention fund. So intervention fund wasn't the aim thing, because commercial funds, as a fund from the pool, used to be very competitive with intervention fund now. But even banks, commercial banks go after intervention funds now, from the likes of BOI, from the likes of DBN and the rest of it, to to finance transactions, knowing fully well that, okay, even as a bank, you will guarantee this transaction, and you have the expertise to appraise and the rest. But believe you me, right now, that intervention fund is not available the way it used to be. Because before, you probably see 3-4 banks going after it. Right now, all the banks are going after the intervention fund. So it's not available. Because of that, the intervention fund that used to be in the region of, for the purpose of this discussion, maybe 15, 16, is now moving towards 20 because there is a demand for it. So while we are trying as much as possible to reduce the risk associated with a transaction by getting blended financing, by getting credit risk instruments, by essentially even the availability of funds for debt, which area really need before you now release funds for successful projects, the debt is not there as it used to be. Now, talking about fund, banks and other organizations get funds outside the shores of this country. But there are other challenges that are associated with this, and that is FX risk, right? I know REA has done a lot, and REA has actually done a lot by saying that, look, for every completed project, I pay you in dollars. Am I correct? I want to be sure. Yeah, I'll pay you in dollar. That mitigates it. Even though the payment is coming in dollar, at the time the client is collecting the funding, or rather at the time the bank is collecting the funding, the bank has already incurred a risk on the FX fund it has received. So even if as a bank you are collecting that, you want to hedge the funding, is at a cost. So as a country, we need to get to a point where we have to look inward for the funding and dedicate it directly to this infrastructure, renewable energy is an infrastructure sector. So, and direct it there as much as possible. So I think I will stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for Mr. Seyi Okunuga. We all know that, just like Barrister Kofo shared earlier, that we need to have a strong regulatory environment that gives confidence to both the RESCOs, the players in the industry, and also the investors. I'm going to go back to the MD, CEO of REA, to ask, what are the plans you have in engaging the State Regulatory Commission? Before we used to have only one neck, and it was easy to engage. But now we have all the states creating, their regulatory agencies. Is there any plan from the REA to engage the regulatory agencies so that it does not become a clog in the wheel, of the progress that is planned? How can we have, maybe not suggestive right now from my question, like you did about 3-4 years ago, having a fast track, a sort of like a table, liaison table, desk that liaises with the regulatory? Would you be setting up such for all the states? Please, can you share your plan?
Thank you, Ayo. Very good question. What we signed yesterday with Lagos State, it's one of the multidimensional approach that we are adopting to engage the state. The first is we created the state-by-state roundtable, where we bring, like our cardinal rule, the chief executive of the state executive, the RESCOs, the REAs, and have that roundtable. We present the outcome of the geospatial mapping and give opportunity for the RESCOs to tell the chief executive of the state that for us to come to your state, you need to do A, B, C, and D. If you don't, we go to another state. So we first create that so that it goes directly to the executive, to the ears of the executive of the state. The second approach is also addressing it from a much strategic level. And that is our engagement with the National Economic Council, whereby all the governors and the vice president and key ministers of different sectors of the Nigerian economy are members. So we engage with the NEC to the level that NEC had created a standing subcommittee under it for the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. The essence of that engagement also is to make sure that not only the regulator, but each state have a predetermined structure that would incentivize private sector investment in the renewable infrastructure and will not distort what we already have started. So we ensure that engagement with the National Economic Council and the state-by-state roundtable. The third approach is through the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. And like I said, we will soon present it to the NEC. What we did in that is we did state-by-state assessment. At this moment, we have each state where they are when it comes to renewable electricity or electricity access challenge. Some states, to the shock, they scored 1 out of 5. Lagos State, we gave the feedback during our roundtable that their rating is 3.5. And this is reality. We use 5 parameters. What is the funding? What are the regulatory framework that the state has put in place? What are the capacity development or skills available? What are the data availability within the state? So we used that parameter, we did in-depth assessment of each state and provide the outcome of that, which we will present to the National Economic Council. And we also have done like a pathway from where each state is to where it should be. From the one that a state scores, how can that state move to maybe 3.5 to be the next Lagos? These are the things that the state needs to be done in practical terms. So these are the way we are engaging. We don't want to just engage with the regulator, but we want each state to have system structure strategy that will incentivize private sector investment into the state and will not disrupt the work that we have already started in the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for the MD. I'm going to be opening the floor at this moment for questions. So if you have questions, can I just see your hand up? Yeah, I know I will be seeing hands. And I'm going to count. Please, if you don't put your hands up right now because of time, I may not call you again. I think I have 1, 2, 3 from the front. I'm looking out to, okay, 4. I'm looking out to see if I have a female person asking question. I have 4 males right now. Anybody asking question? Okay, I think total what we have is 4. Can we have the mic on the floor? We'll start from the, okay, we'll start from that row there, yeah. Thank you. Please, if you can, if you want a question to be answered by a specific panelist, you can specify.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
My question has to do with funding, because it's a major issue. No matter how smart we talk here, if we don't unbundle that issue that has to do with funding, I don't think we'll move forward. It's a difficult situation for everybody, given what the dynamics show now in the economy. And I'm not saying this because I am saying the banks don't know what to do. But first and foremost, I would want to make a suggestion to Lagos State. Are we floating a bond to support this project? Because from the way the banks are struggling to answer most of these questions, it's going to be very critical. I will end up opening accounts with 10 banks to look for money to support what I intend to do. And given that situation, I don't think it will be very good for this investment, for this strategy that we want to put up. Secondly, banks, can we have a financing model recommended to the state government where we have OEMs, where we have maybe facilities that fall within a particular band, say 2 billion, 10 billion, and so. And so what are the criteria, the risk criteria, what is acceptable risk criteria for banks, given this band of funding, or volume of funding that a particular investor will be requesting for in the market? Can we have something like that in place? The other issue I want to look at...
is it a question or a submission again?
It's a question.
Okay, so your first question, you have 2 questions already?
Yes.
Okay, this is a third question.
To the government, do we have a bond? Because a bond sort of gives a lot of guarantees, to people, to investors to draw on and run the business. Then the second one is to the banks. Can we have a funding model, a financing model that encompasses everything from the OEMs down to, not only banks looking for collections. I want banks that also support investment. So what do? What model do we have that the state government is accepting to such models so that everybody can log into it and that is qualified, to go into that, to do the business? That's what I'm talking about. The third issue is resources. That is human resources. Not this one we are talking about. We've not dimensioned, the gaps in that, which is also very, very important, because I know part of the problems that we face, when you talk about funding, getting your money back, is the ability to manage the investment, the ability to manage the equipment, the experiences that we require, in the value chain management of structures or infrastructures of this nature. And so I think I don't know whether there's a session that will speak about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So number 1 is on whether we have bonds. Number 2 is what's the structure that the bank wants. And number 3 is on capacity building. So I'll start from the last one. There is a particular session for capacity building in this conference, and I'm sure it's one of the breakout sessions. And I know that the CEO of Harry also spoke about what they're doing about capacity building. That question 1, I would leave it for Mr. Seyi Okunuga to answer later, so that we don't waste time. So we take all the questions right now, and we'll come back to answer them and close out. Can we have the second person, please? Yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emmanuel. I'm a finance and energy attorney with Denton's Acres Law. My question is very simple, and there are 2 legs of the question. The first leg of the question is directed to Mr. Aliyu. So Mr. Aliyu had pointed out that, like alluded by my friend who mentioned that one of the issues, or one of the key issues in rural electrification is financing. Mr. Aliyu had pointed out there are major programs or issues that they are already undertaking as an agency in this country. So my question is, in terms of raising money from the capital markets, I'm talking about bond issuances, or some other debt issuances that the agency might consider. Is the agency considering anyone as a stand? And now this question is in light of the new Investment and Security Act that was signed into law of recent, which is ordinarily given the agencies backing across several governmental parastatals. The second leg of the question is directed to Barrister Kofo, given that she is representing a Lagos State agency in this regard now. Is the Lagos State agency or the Lagos State government, as the case may be, are they interested in supporting or guaranteeing these bond issuances or any other debt issuance that the Rural Electrification Agency may subsequently consider in the course of raising funds for achieving some of their goal? I think that is just the leg of...
Thank you very much. Can we have a third question? Yes, at the back.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Ladipo from Compograph Systems. Now, my question first, I think I will be specific to Madam Commissioner. You talked about putting out a framework. What timeline exactly do we have for that framework to come into reality. I don't want to take a loan today, and the framework for the business is not ready until 2 years' time. So I want us to have an idea of that exactly. Secondly, you said something about financing is dependent a lot on data, and that's very true. When you want to finance, you need a lot of data to support it. Now, is the Regulatory Commission or the Lagos State Ministry of Energy going to commit itself to creating and updating the data available across the state regularly so that people can pick on this? Because by the time you ask an entrepreneur to first go and get the data that he needs to use, time has gone, money has been blown. So and you move into a lot of countries, you see that becomes the work of government. They create, when they talk about creating an enabling environment, majorly it's about creating this data, for people to be able to come and use it. So is the Lagos State government, through its agencies, committing themselves to be able to do that, to support the business? Finally, now, one of the things, and I'm sure my chairman, president of the Renewable Energy Association will attest to this, a lot of the things that are funded, that have encouraged the success of the rescues is because, to an extent, the initial move into this area was subsidized. It was hugely subsidized by a lot of investment from outside the country. Yes, we turn them around and say they are intervention funds, but what happens when these intervention funds dry? We have seen what is happening from the US, and we have seen that it's a possibility that we get to a point that these funds will dry up. How are we sure that those mini grids can be successful? It simply means that we will end up shifting to consumer funding. But from now, are we letting the consumers know that this thing that you are taking and you are paying a bit for now is subsidized in such a way that by the time you get to the point when the subsidies dry up, it is sustainable. And you don't just have mini grids all over the place that are closed down and are not operational. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then a final question. But I hope we noted, Barrister Kofo, you noted your questions. Mr. Abba, you noted the question. Okay. The final question, I think, is someone on this side. Is in front. Now we're having a woman joining. We didn't have you before, but we will permit you. So let's just permit. Let's have the man in front first, then we have the woman after. Thank you.
Good afternoon, the panel. My name is Oluwaseyi Adebo. I just want to ask a question from Mr. Aliyu. It's short, brief questions. You are talking about, all we are talking now is on financing, but the problem with woman capacity. If you get all these loans, if you get all these things down, the people that you are going to use can cause a problem with your finances. Now, from what I learned from you, you said you are going to create there's a university that is on ground that they will maybe admit people to come and learn, and they will train and become an expert. What are the pipeline that has been done in which the students or the people that are interested to be a part of such a training will be able to access it easily? That's my question.
Thank you. It's noted. Okay. Here's a final question.
My name is Engineer Mohammed Issa from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. I want to ask, since the law allows the distribution and generation to be privatized, I mean the investment of distribution and generation to be privatized, can the state, I mean the regulator, be an investor too, if they find it necessary.
Okay, that question will still go to the MD of REA. Sorry, Barrister Kufo can take that question, right? Okay, the question is straightforward. Can the state be an investor? Can the state invest in projects? So you can add that to your question so that we don't overload the CEO. There are so many questions that have been directed to him. So, okay, so we're going to start. I think that's all for questions. Mr. Okunuga, I think you will quickly answer yours. We'll flow in that direction, then the CEO, then we have Barrister Kufo. After that, we'll have just a roundup from all of us.
Okay, thank you. I think the gentleman asked 4 questions in one, and I think I will pick it from matters around the data that we've all spoken about, right? And it has to do with funding, really, and start with data. I will start with a story just yesterday. One of the developers called me on phone. In fact, one of my colleagues walked into my office and said, Oga, we have a developer that wants a reference letter to REA immediately, that REA has demanded for the reference letter from a bank. I said, okay, does this customer have an account with us? They said yes. Okay, that's no problem. We should be able to issue the reference letter. How is the account active? He said the account is dormant. For how long? For over 2 years. Why is this developer meeting me for a reference letter? Let's ask the developer whether he has an account in another bank that for now can issue REA the reference letter. They said they are unsure whether he has, that the focus is on us. For us as a bank, that raises a red flag, because it means that that particular developer has not been functioning, has not been working. He hasn't been executing projects. Naturally, as a banker, what I would say is for such a company to go and operate under an active company that is a developer. Be in partnership, become a technical partner to a company that has a track record, and approach the bank. Because you don't have a track record. And that is why it's good to maintain a relationship with a bank. It doesn't have a track record. It doesn't have a track record with me. It doesn't have a track record with another bank. But yet he wants a reference letter. So it starts with history, with data. With data. What is the credit history of the customer? Even if you have not been borrowing, it must be that there is a transaction you've done for one state or one company, C&I here and there, and there is inflows and outflow. You know what we say? They say follow the money. As a bank, what we do, what speaks to us, as if we are Abba or we speak to the Oracle, what speaks to us as bankers is the money. It speaks to us. I can interpret several languages from money. So when you approach me, and then the next thing the developers will say is that, oh, the banks are not financing us. We've gone to meet XYZ. We've gone to meet FCMB and everything. Because FCMB, Sterling Bank, and everybody, we speak to almost the same Oracle, who say almost the same thing. And they will now meet with REA and say they are not supporting them. So it starts with history. Then the question now is, you spoke about OEM, vendor, this thing. For a bank, for any renewable energy transaction, has different phases. Are you working as an engineering procurement company? Are you working as a developer, as a power as a service, that you want to see the development of a transaction from beginning to end, and you want to be collecting as it is? Are you a technical partner? What exactly are you doing in the transaction? Or maybe you are just a vendor, or maybe you are just an importer, or maybe you assemble solar panel. What exactly are you doing? You need to be clear, because it is at that point when we know the kind of financing that will structure for you. We, as a bank, we've realized that a lot of companies approach us without, they just have an idea, and they approach us, and it is now left for us as a bank to incubate that idea. Right now, as a bank, as Sterling Bank, we've left the point where we will say we are just financiers. First, we are advisors. We are advisors. So the first thing is to advise you on what to do. In the case of yesterday, the immediate advice is that go and partner with a company that has a credit history or transaction history working.
Yes.
And
so let's
lastly,
round up on it.
yeah, and lastly, you spoke about original equipment manufacturers, whether you want to approach. Not too long ago, we wrote to some original equipment companies, Huawei, like the Huawei, like the Victron, the key ones around, and we told them that, look, we are happy to give you a credit guarantee, a payment guarantee for developers to acquire, to buy your product, because some of these companies, they have a whole lot of stocks in the millions and billions of naira in their warehouse that will be there for 2, 3, 4, 5 months without sales. We are saying release it to A4&T or any other company for a period of 90 days. We will guarantee the payment. Whether you collect the product to go and execute a project, whether you collect the product to go and sell, in the 90 days, we will give you the funding. That is a structure, because it will eliminate interest costs. And I hope I have tried all that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Round of applause for Mr. Okunuga. Okay, pass to the CEO, please. Can you just quickly help us answer all the questions?
Yeah, so I would just answer 3 key thematic areas: funding, sustainability, and human capital, human capacity. As regards to funding, I've never been on the side of the banks, but I would like to say that I'm sitting here to say the banks are ready to fund renewable energy.
A round of applause for the banks.
I'm saying
we need to encourage them.
Absolutely. I'm saying this because from the vantage point that I'm sitting, I have seen the transactions and I have seen what they have done. And I would like to share something very important. What even the banks now are doing, they are not just financing, they are providing financial solution. There is a bank that has created a financial solution for private sector. This bank has a shareholder, and the shareholder of the bank is a Chinese bank, one of the biggest Chinese banks. That Chinese biggest bank has a customer that is a PV panels manufacturer. What they have now created is a situation whereby a local developer in Nigeria can have, through that relationship with the bank, can be talking to a tier 1 manufacturer of PV panels in China, which ordinarily, if it's to go through the normal process, will have to go through like 9 middlemen before getting that product. But through the bank said, since this tier 1 manufacturer of PV panels is our customer, let's create a visibility through the financing agreement that we are going to provide to this customer, to this tier 1 manufacturer. The banks are becoming more and more innovative and ready to do business. When we did the review of the drift, we did a review of all the application of private sector to the banks. What we find out is, in many instances, we are not ready to even approach the banks like what he said. Some of the application, you will see the business plan not speaking to the bank statement or not well thought through. If the private sector would do their homework, due diligence, they will get access to financing from the banks. This is something that I would assure you. If you don't get it, please come to REA and we'll hold that bank accountable. In terms of the bond, we are working towards that. In fact, the guy beside me on my right has already, well, before starting the thing, he was trying to convince me to work with them for the bond raising. Whether he will succeed or not, I don't know. But this is something that already we are looking at to start to do. And that bond is to answer the question of sustainability, the question answered by the gentleman there. In the event the grant finish, what happens? So already REA is thinking in that regard. And that is why we created the Renewable Asset Management Company. That company would, one, warehouse the asset, two, use the asset to raise more funding. And that funding will continue to be raised to ensure that even if we don't have loans and grants from the World Bank, AFDB, and other DFIs, we have our own funding to continue to catalyze the private sector to do this funding. And that is why we are aiming at 1 trillion naira as the funding of that. But we are starting with the bond of 500 billion naira. In terms of human capacity development, we can't create the skills all at once. So what are the processes that we are doing? I spoke about the RESCO Next, 100 new skills and competencies that will be trained for 1 year. 1 year, not only classroom training, are going to be trained and be sent to the sector. We have already done 150 female STEM students. One of the STEM students that we have, the commissioner from Kano is here. She's now an advisor to the governor of Kano State in energy transition. This is to show you the quality of training that we are doing. And we have started, we are now going to do the 1,500. This will continue over a period of time to ensure that we are not only have a talent pipeline for Nigeria, but a talent pipeline that will serve the entire sub-Saharan Africa. That is the target. This is even before the renewable energy that will serve the entire Africa. Thank you.
A round of applause for the MD. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think among some of the questions you asked on financing or funding, there's a one you asked for financing model with state government, right? If that is possible. And I think it's actually a very strategic question because every business has a life cycle at the early stage, you know, and in the renewable energy space, a lot of people have built their business around grants, and that grant will still disappear because when you want to prove a concept, the first thing you do is to use grant because you want to prove it's possible. When you now get to adoption stage, you now need a catalyst funding so that other people can learn it. So that by the time the business is at growth stage, you can then withdraw and people are doing their businesses. So depending on what the state wants to do, and I think this is where our expertise can be made available to the state. If it's, because naturally, all over the world, rural electrification requires subsidy in one form or the other. So the question is, how do you want to leverage that subsidy, you know, or what are your strategic objectives? I remember a few years ago when we are the first to launch the productive energy use. So we are talking about rural electrification. So as a state government, what is your strategic objective? Is it just to give people's rights, or you want to give them a productive usage? We did an analysis so many years ago where we looked at the spending patterns of the rural energy guys. And what we see is it goes up like this and then goes down and stays down and then comes up. And when we did the plot, we found out that when it goes up are usually when they have their harvesting period. And when there's no harvesting period, it completely goes down. That is a wasted asset. You know, I was in this one in Niger State, the very first. And so there's a lot the state, and I just encourage the state people here, don't look at this as another project. You got to be very strategic about it. You know, don't just deploy energy for deploying sake. If it's not activating productive use, please don't do it. It's so expensive. But if you do it right, it can change the entire. I don't want to go into detail. If you have time, I can give for free. There's a lot of work. In fact, the work we did in the Niger State, That was what actually changed. Notice a lot of the funding coming now is on the productive use. It can change your rural economics completely. If you deploy energy for deploying sake, you're going to have a lot of assets that are being used only 20-25% of the time. And I think the state should get involved, and should get involved strategically, and we can give those free tools. And then you choose how you want to run it. I think there's a place for that financing model.
Great. A round of applause for Mr. George. Okay, the final word now from Barrister Kofo to answer that question, and from there we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so I'll just quickly run through. So the first one is support from government. And I'm not holding brief for the ministry, and also for, as a regulator. So what I would say is, clearly from the law, it is very important, and also from the policies, especially the draft policies that were recently churned out. You will see that there is actually this this commitment to actually assist in providing any form of measure that would actually enhance credit, especially for the developers that are coming in. So different things like tax incentives and all of that. I do not see anything about provision of guarantees, but when you have a fund that has been created already, and then again, I understand during the presentation on Monday when we had the roundtable REA, and also if you go on site, you will see the new plan, the SMAP. It's called the SMAP. Is this state matching plan, which is about the REA coming in and also collaborating with the states in financing most of these rural electrification projects. And it's about, putting down 60%, government putting down, I think, 30%, and I think the developer 10% or thereabouts. So these are actually ways of assisting in a way to ensure that you're actually attracting. So there are various ways. If you look at the policy also, you see that commitment from the ministry to say they're going to be coming up with initiatives and different strategies in ensuring that they put up these enhancements. What they're going to be, we do not know yet, but I can tell you that definitely those are the angles that they are actually looking into, and those supports are already there. The law is very clear. The law has actually made some of this in place. Having that electrification fund alone is enough, comfort that is actually one thing that is done well. The framework for regulatory, that's the way I've actually documented it. We all know this market is actually just developing. It was actually recently, the law was signed last year, December, and there's a transition process. We all know that. There's a whole lot of, transitioning going on right now. But in terms of putting the laws together, this has actually commenced. If you actually go on the website, there's actually a website actually live right now. Is being a live program, you will know that it's going to be updated from time to time. The major regulations, guidelines that are actually required to kick off have already actually been initiated. But it's definitely going to be a gradual thing. It's a journey, like we all know. And as regulators, we've actually made up our mind, also as the state, to be able to achieve the vision and the goals. We are definitely not going to be sleeping on anything. It's something that we're going to be doing as fast as we can and as quickly as we can, as promptly as we can. That I can assure. Is government going to commit to updating data? I had already mentioned the fact that even the law actually supports this. And if you go on also, one of the things we've actually deliberated on as a commission together is to actually ensure that there's data management. The data management is actually one key principle that is actually moving us. And what do we intend to do with this? We intend to actually be that hub, create a hub where you are able to access any form of data that you require. So once you go into that hub, you are able to take out whatever data that you want to create or you want to take out. We're going to be able to do this together with the different stakeholders that you have in the state today. We're going to be working with the GENCOs, the DISCOs, the rural electrification developers, different stakeholders that you have. We're going to be doing a whole lot of collaborations, even the consumers, because even the consumers actually need data, even to be able to manage their own consumptions and all of that. So we're going to be creating that hub where we intend to also make it as real-time as possible. But of course, like I said again, it's a journey. It's going to be capital intensive, but it's one of the principles that we've actually said is going to guide how we're going to create that enabling environment, and it is very key and it's on the front burner for us. I just wanted to, okay, the last question is on, can the regulator actually invest? For the regulator is simply a regulator. We are going to be regulating the market. We are not supposed to get into the business, but we're going to provide all those enablers for you to be able to operate, and we're going to be monitoring and enforcing. But when you talk about the states, I do not see anything that actually prohibits, right? And if you look at public-private partnership, it's some form of investment that will be made by the government anyways, because the government is also going to be putting down some or making accessible some financing one way or the other. And then if you look at the law also, you will see a provision on how one of the ways you can utilize the electrification fund. You can actually invest so long as it's in line with the financial regulations of the state, just to be sure that you are also in line with the regulations and it doesn't also get in the way of the obligations of the electrification agency that is going to be managing this fund. And then lastly, please, to round up, I will also just want to add one or two things to two key issues that were raised here. One is on the human capital. I'm not going to overflog it, but I can also tell you that it's also on the front burner of the states. I understand the RA has said something about it, and they've also kick-started it. The states, if you look at the policies that were released, you see that there is this critical commitment in ensuring that there's training, there's capacity building, because we also understand that this is very, very key in actually moving us to that vision or moving us to achieving that goal. And then the other one is on data. I've actually mentioned that, but all in all, we're going to be doing a whole lot of collaboration, doing a whole lot of consultation, and we're going to be carrying everybody along because transparency is very key to us. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Barrister Kofo. I think we'll just stop here. I know we've overshot the time. We also had to allow you to ask questions. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to everybody for listening. And let's give a round of applause to the entire panel for doing a great job.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our panel. They've done a fantastic job. And as usual, we would like to recognize them and appreciate them for their efforts. To help us present the plaques to them, please join me welcome the Honorable Commissioner, Energy and Water Resources, Plateau State. Put your hands together for Honorable Bashir Lawandi as he comes forward to help us with the presentation.
This is to Mr. George Ogbonnaya, recognition of your participation as panelist at the Lagos Energy Summit. Okay, we present this to Barrister Olokun in recognition of your participation as panelist at the Lagos Energy Summit. Okay, I think Mr. Olabanjo Alimi is not here. Can we have the next one? It's also not here. Okay. Okay, Mr. Okunuga. A round of applause to him. Can we have the next one? Okay. This, okay. This for Mr. Abba Aliyu. A round of applause for him. Okay.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our recipients. And this one is for our moderator, Mr. Aliyu. So yes, it's time for the group picture. Please step forward. Are you okay, photographers, where they are? Kindly step forward, please. It'll be nice if we hold on to our plaques so that we can see it. All right, and I like the smiles on your faces. Thank you.